You'll remember 9/11, the September 11th attacks. And after 9/11, the country was kind of whipped up into a frenzy of patriotism. Some of us, it's interesting to think, some of us weren't even born yet at that point, but the country was whipped up into a frenzy of very frightening patriotism. It was, my country, right or wrong. George W. Bush said that you're either with us or you're against us, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. There were flags everywhere and military parades everywhere, and it was quite frightening. And in that moment, the organized political left completely dropped the ball and made what I consider to be one of their greatest blunders, was that if you listen to what Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky and Ward Churchill said in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, you would think that Osama bin Laden was Ho Chi Minh. You would think that Osama bin Laden was Che Guevara. The narrative that they had was that America has gone all over the world and committed all these horrendous crimes, true, and that now America has been attacked and some of what America has done to the rest of the world has happened to the United States. Again, true, but it's a problematic narrative because Iraq, that had suffered under horrendous sanctions from the United States, did not attack the United States. China didn't attack the United States. Vietnam did not attack the United States. The people who attacked the United States are people that are U.S. allies. Saudi Arabia was aligned with the United States. And immediately after 9/11, you'll notice that the government of Libya, led by Gaddafi, was very happy to support the United States and even offered to torture prisoners to help the United States catch the perpetrators of 9/11. And the Syrian government was also said, wow, we've been fighting al-Qaeda types for years, and the Saudis have been trying to overthrow us for years, and we would like to help you. And Iraq supported the United States, and Cuba supported the United States. And many countries around the world said, my goodness, we've been dealing with these extremists and fanatics that the USA has been backing against the Soviet Union and against independent and nationalist governments around the world. And now these extremists, kind of like the Contras of Nicaragua, kind of like other extremists the USA has backed around the world, now they've turned around and attacked the United States. So maybe for a moment we can get the United States to understand how bad these policies are of arming these extremists. But the interpretation that the U.S. organized political left had is because it was the United States that was attacked and because the person who did it was a brown-skinned person from another part of the world, they immediately started sympathizing to some degree or other with the perpetrator. The idea was that somehow the Al-Qaeda were freedom fighters or something like that. And Yuri Kochiyama, who's a very important Asian American activist of Japanese heritage, a friend of Malcolm X, she was in her 80s, she was old, and we can forgive her for this, but she gave a horrendous interview where she compared Osama bin Laden to Malcolm X and Ho Chi Minh and said he's a hero to the people of the world, and that wasn't the case. And you can understand why that message to average Americans didn't go over so well, right? And if the country's just been attacked and people are fearing for their lives and there's hysteria about terrorist attacks, if the message of the left is, well, we deserved it, we're the bad guys, we're the terrorists, you can understand that especially in the age of very simplistic, watered-down politics, where everyone has a very short attention span, the response of people to Noam Chomsky, to Howard Zinn, to Ward Churchill was a hostile one. It was an unfriendly one because they said, look, we feel like we're under threat, we feel like we're under attack, and the organized political left is telling us basically that we deserve it and kind of making statements that imply somehow the people who did it are heroes. You can understand why the left was isolated. And when Bush coming out of 9/11 attacked Afghanistan, he had something like 90% approval ratings for his invasion of Afghanistan, and the organized political left was pretty isolated. Now, the invasion of Iraq was much less popular. Europe opposed it and other forces opposed it. Iraq had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks, so there was widespread opposition to the war in Iraq. The country at the time of the invasion was about 50-50. But there was a lot of confusion on the left because they had this narrative of we are going to speak truth to power. There was a lot of religious pacifism, a lot of candlelight vigils, and a lot of that settlers mentality that average Americans are the enemy. And Ward Churchill, who was the leading Native American scholar, who became kind of a target of Fox News during these years, Ward Churchill, he wrote his essay, Some People Push Back, where he talked about how he said 9/11 was horrendous, but it logically makes sense because of the U.S. sanctions on Iraq that killed all these innocent people. What would you do if you're an Iraqi? What can you do to wake the Americans up? Well, the thing was, Iraq didn't attack the United States. So, I mean, it's a fallacious essay. And the essay blames average Americans. It says, you know, average Americans know the U.S. government put these sanctions on Iraq. It's killing people. They're not doing anything about it. And it referred to some people in the Twin Towers as little Eichmanns, compared them to, you know, it was a horrendous anti-populist narrative. But it comes out of the 1960s. You know, this is the 1960s political narrative. This is the weather underground that thinks average Americans are pigs. That's how they responded to it. And Ward Churchill, it should be noted, you know, the leading Native American scholar, and he wrote these essays after 9/11 that made him kind of a target for Fox News and the conservatives. But he's also, he was the main effort, one of the main ideologues of Native American support for the Contras in Nicaragua. And he actually went to Nicaragua to work with the Contras against the Sandinistas in the 1980s, published essays justifying Native Americans collaborating with the CIA against the socialist government of Nicaragua. So it kind of makes sense that his analysis of this would be a kind of a wacky and weird one.